So good Shabbos, everyone. We certainly have a lot to celebrate this past week with the return of the living hostages. Sof Babait, finally at home. Now, for outside observers, the central place that the hostages have held in the Jewish psyche over the last couple of years can seem puzzling. They, after all, were just one factor in an extremely complex regional war, a war in which the future of the entire state of Israel was at stake. And this sensitivity for the hostages could be seen as a weakness, and was seen by that way by Hamas and other terrorist groups. We know that for decades, they've kidnapped Israelis to secure the release of thousands of convicted murderers. For example, in 2011, Israel released over 1,000 convicted prisoners for one abducted Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit. Why? Why the fate of hostages always played such a big part in what it means to be Jewish, for what it means for the Jewish state of Israel? Why? Today, of course, we begin the Torah again, the story of creation, Bereshit. And the answer to why we care so deeply, and always have, is really found right at the beginning of the Torah itself. Safrona, a 16th century Italian rabbi, asked a question that seems obvious, so obvious we might overlook it. The rabbi asked, why does the Torah that we read today begin with the creation of the world? Why does the Torah not start later, in the book of Exodus, when the Jewish people are leaving Egypt, and we as the Jewish people receive our first commandment from God? If the Torah is our book, the Jewish people's book, why begin with the vastness of the universe when the story of the Jewish people doesn't begin until much later? Safrona teaches that the Torah begins with creation to remind you and me that we're not the entire story. We, the Jewish people, are just one part of a larger story. Because before there was Israel, before there was the Jewish people, there was humanity. And before there were commandments for us, there was a purpose for all of humankind. For the world itself was created with moral intention, for goodness and for justice for all people. When God later chooses our people, the Jewish people, it's to continue that divine work, to carry forward the mission that began at creation. Now, you and I, as members of the Jewish people, we were not chosen because we're better, but because we were needed. To be, as the Torah reminds us again and again, to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Really, in so many ways, we're called upon to be a family, to serve, to teach, to lift up others, to help the world live to the promise, to live up to the promise from which it was first created. From the very beginning, the fact that we were chosen is not a privilege of power. In many ways, it was a privilege of purpose. It's the honor and the responsibility of helping to make God's world a better place. Let's look at the creation story for a second. We see this idea isn't new. God had three plans. First plan for the world was simple. It was a Garden of Eden, a perfect world. There was Adam and Eve, harmony with nature, closeness with God. But that plan fails when they eat from the tree of knowledge, and innocence is lost. So God tries again. 10 generations later, the world is full of violence and corruption, and God brings a flood to begin again with Noah and his family. But that second plan doesn't bring lasting goodness. The generations after Noah still struggle to build a world of justice and peace. So God tries a third plan, a new idea entirely. Not a perfect garden, not a righteous man, but a family. God calls Abraham and Sarah and says, through you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That's where our story begins. That's why there is the Jewish people. God creates a people whose purpose is to live by divine values and serve it as example for all humanity. And ever since then, that's been our calling. That's why we're here. Now, the world is not perfect. There's certainly a lot more work to do. But the fact that we are still here perhaps reminds us that this plan is evolving, that God is okay with this plan because in some ways it is working. Because you and I are not just a nation, we're a family, bound together by faith, by shared memory, and this shared purpose. And by being part of a family, we feel one another's joys and sorrows, even with people we have never personally met. As it's been said, and I saw again posted so much on social media, you and I, as Jews, we're one of the smallest nations, but one of the largest families. And of course, it's not always easy to be part of this family. From the very beginning, carrying God's moral message into the world has made us different. And sometimes, unfortunately, that difference has made us targets. Many do not like a people reminding them they can do better. Many people do not like a people who serve as a model of goodness and light, especially the forces of hate and darkness. We've had our enemies throughout history. Pharaohs, Hamans, Hitlers, and yet somehow we're still here. We're still living out God's plan, this third plan, still trying to make the world better. Being part of this family doesn't mean life is easy, but it does mean this. We feel everything more deeply, the pain, the struggle, and the responsibility. And it also means we care for one another more deeply. We carry each other's burdens. We celebrate with each other's joys. And we don't turn away from one another's suffering. Because when one member of this family is hurting, we all feel it. And whether they're Jews in Ukraine or Russia, Germany or the United States, and of course Israel. And that's why for 2 years, we had those chairs up outside. And we still do and will, because the murdered hostages, not all of them have been returned. It's why we had a table outside. It's why we wore those yellow ribbons. It's why our hearts have been so tied to the hostages. And that's why we prayed for them, spoke out for them, advocated for their release. Even when the world grew quiet and criticized us for trying to save the hostages, you and I refused to stop caring. Because that's what it means to be part of this covenantal family, to hold on to one another through good times and bad. It's the reason millions were sitting on the edge of their seats this past Sunday night and Monday morning. Some of us didn't sleep, glued to our screens. Nothing else seemed to matter. Anxious for people you and I may never get to meet, but still anxious for the return of David and Guy, Ariel and Bar, Ziv, Elon, Eitan, and so many others. If you've ever wondered what being Jewish is all about, that was it. Because that's who we are. A family chosen not for privilege, but for purpose. A family who from the beginning of time have carried this beautiful divine mission through every single generation. From the Garden of Eden to Abraham, from the Exodus from Egypt to return, from ancient times to modern day, to the trials and tribulations that so many of our great-grandparents went through in Europe, to beautiful Benot Mitzvah like today. From war and freedom to the return to the land of Israel. And tomorrow, I have the privilege to travel to Israel with 40 other Houstonians with our local Federation mission to see how our family there is doing, to stand beside them, to remind them that they're not alone, that their family here in Houston, Texas is with them and always will be. And I look forward to coming back and sharing my experience with all of you. And I'm sure bringing back incredible stories of courage, resilience, and hope from our brothers and sisters. My friends, as we start a new Jewish year with Thanksgiving and with a little hope, may our greater Jewish family be strengthened for a better year ahead. And to this, let us all say, Amen.